Writing conditionals leads us to working on variations of that. We want to be able to write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive of conditional statements. So if our conditional is if P then Q, where P is the hypothesis, Q is the conclusion, another way to write that is P with an arrow to the Q, meaning P implies Q. So when we want to write the converse is you swap the hypothesis with the conclusion. So you would write if Q then P. And if we wrote that out with the implies, it would be Q implies P. Now, inverse means we're going to take and we're going to use this statement with a not in front of it. We're going to say if it's not P or not Q. So to write this, we go back to the original and we put if not P, then not Q. And a way to write that with symbols, the not is, we write what's called a tilde in its place. So a tilde with the P implies a tilde with the Q. Not P, then not Q, implies not Q. The contrapositive is where you put both the converse and the inverse together. You take and you do both of them to the original. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the P and the Q and I'm going to put nots in front of them. So it's going to be if not Q, then not P is my contrapositive. And to write that out in this format, it's not Q implies not P. All right, let's do that with a statement. Our statement, our conditional is, if John goes to the lake, then he goes skiing. The converse is where you just swap the hypothesis and the conclusion. So we'd write, if John goes skiing, then he goes to the lake. Now, just so we're clear, if the original statement is true, doesn't mean that the converse or the inverse is always true. So these two could be false if the original was true. If the original is true, if he goes to the lake, he always goes skiing. If he goes skiing, does it mean he goes to the lake? Well, maybe he goes skiing on the river or something like that. So here, the inverse is where I go back to the original and I do it with nots instead. So if John does not go to the lake, then he does not go skiing. So again, if the first one's true, that's not necessarily true, but sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes the original conditional is not true either. So the contrapositive always has the same truth value as the original. And what we do is, again, we're going to swap the goes to the lake and the goes skiing and put it into the negative. So we would put, if John does not go skiing, then he does not go to the lake. Okay, so we want to be able to take conditionals and be able to write them in other forms. The other forms we talked about here are converse, inverse, and contrapositive. They have variations of swapping the hypothesis and conclusion and using the negation on those. And when we do that, we can be able to talk about the original conditional and the other statements and their truth values based on the information.